The story of where I'm from Sri Lanka. My parents, my brother and I, we moved from Sri Lanka in '91, and I remember the day as if it happened yesterday. It was, I believe it was a weekday, and it was sort of mid to late afternoon when we landed, and we were taken directly from the airport. We were picked up by my uncle and we were taken to his home in Craigieburn. And I remember the first impressions of feeling of fresh beginnings and of really wide open space and clear air and the warmth of the sun. It was a strange but beautiful place to come to.
So my name is Luis. I'm Mateo's dad, and I was born in El Salvador, which is a little country in Central America, not far from Mexico. It's actually a tiny little country. Probably Tasmania is bigger than El Salvador. Did you know that?
No.
And I came here with my family when I was Mateo's age. I was 8 years old when I came to Australia. My family decided to come here, or applied to come here, because in El Salvador there was a war, and it was a very dangerous place to live in for us. So Australia was a very generous country, is a very generous country, and allowed us to come here and live here. And we've been sort of moved back and forth a bit, but have lived here almost 31 years now.
So we decided to come to Melbourne specifically because we really like the whole, I think it's such a melting pot. It's like we have cultures from everywhere, and it's sort of similar in Malaysia, but we have like 3 main races in Malaysia. But then coming to Melbourne, it was just like, whoa, there's so many more, and it's been really interesting. And we wanted to give our kids the opportunity for a better life. Yeah, so that was the main reason why we decided to come.
Okay, so I'm Teresa.
I'm Lucio.
And we're from Brazil.
Yeah, we came to Australia because we thought of having the experience of living in another country, getting to know other cultures, and we actually started thinking about New Zealand first, right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then we found out about Australia, and I had a friend at work who mentioned there was a position at Ford in Australia, and I used to work at Ford in Brazil, so I applied for the position and I got it, and then we came.
Yeah, but we didn't come thinking of staying, we came thinking, let's see how it is, but we do love the country.
We do enjoy it.
Yeah. And when I came, I was pregnant, 6 months pregnant, so Serena was born here.
My name is Erica. I grew up in Ireland. My maiden name is Walsh and my marriage name is Bella. I came here for a year in 1996 with a girlfriend of mine, and she chose Australia because she had met some Melbourne girls while travelling. So we came to visit the Melbourne girls, and we stayed here for the year, and I met Paul, Tyke and Cara's dad, during that year. And in January 97, when my year was up, I moved back, and Paul moved to Ireland with me on a 6-month visa and stayed there for 8 years. So that took us until the end of 2004, and then we moved back here to start a family.
One story comes to mind of being given $2 as something to get at school for my lunch, and I remember getting a Prima box and a sandwich, and I still had change, and I thought, my goodness, this amount of money, I must be really rich in this country. And just that realization of money was different from Sri Lanka to Australia. I remember all the kids in '91 dressed differently here than they did back in Sri Lanka. I remember bread tasting differently and it looked different. There were the bigger differences, of course, like, you know, buses and cars and roads and where we drove, but the little differences were the things that always seems to stand in my mind.
So when we first arrived, the first impression that I had about Melbourne, because we arrived in a place called Springvale, was that it was very cold, because we arrived here in the middle of winter in July. Before we came here, we went to the embassy in Mexico, and they showed us this video about Australia, and it was a beautiful place with people at the beach in t-shirts, having fun, surfing. And when I got here, it was grey and cold, and it was possibly even raining. And I thought, this is nothing like the video they showed us at the embassy. And I didn't speak any English. My dad thought that he spoke a little bit of English. He was a school teacher, and he had studied a little bit of English at university. He thought he was pretty good, but that quickly came tumbling down when he realized that he couldn't understand the Australian accent. So it was a very interesting time at the beginning, not knowing the language, not knowing many people, and being in a place that was very, very far away from where we were from.
Well, when we first came, we both didn't have jobs. Well, we both worked full-time when we were back in Malaysia. But then coming here, it took a while to get jobs. So, but I enjoyed my stint being a full-time mom, because I haven't done that since the kids were born. So I didn't go back to work until Aaron was actually in prep, right? So I've enjoyed my time with him. And it is quite a bit of a shock actually moving here, because like a lot of things are different, and it's funny little things like how they only collect rubbish once a week. It's like the first few weeks we were like, how do we fit a week's worth of rubbish in a bin? So that was a bit hard, and then trying to get used to the lingo, like we used to call everything ice cream, or what was the word? I can't remember it now, but because I'm so used to the word icy pole. But initially when the kids came back and said, oh, we've got a form for icy poles, and I'm like, what's that? What's an icy pole? And yeah, there's quite a few differences, and I find it funny how Australians call cookies bickies. I'm like, why is it bickies? It's not biscuit. Biscuits, like, you know, for us it's savory, but then here everything, cookies are all called bickies. And it's quite different. But now I think after a few years we sort of got used to it, and like for him especially, he sort of learned to speak and talk since we came here, so it's all normal for him, right? Is it?
I guess for me, one thing that struck me was the English. We used to walk together, and I would understand half of what Australians said, and we would understand the other half, and we would look at each other. Oh, okay, that's what they're saying.
Just a different accent from what comparing to what we learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned the American English, and she
I learned the British, so yeah. And for me also it's very interesting how there's parks every corner. We don't really have that in Brazil.
Yeah.
There's always a park and a playground, and it seems to me that the country is very family focused, and that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Brazil is really family focused. So I like it a lot how caring the Australians are about family and children in general. Right?
I think the architecture is it's just different. I think because Brazil has been colonized by many cultures. We came from São Paulo, so you see that a lot of the buildings there, they look very much similar to maybe Southern European. So yeah, there's not much space for
Parks?
Yeah, for parks.
Oh, okay.
Well, the buildings are very close to each other, and yeah, the streets can be very crowded sometimes. Yeah, that's a good thing that we like about Melbourne.
there's not a lot of difference because English is the first language in both countries. We share a similar sense of humour. A lot of my friends here, they're one Irish, one Australian in a relationship, so we have a lot of support and understanding of what it means to be from other parts of the world through our friends. The weather is a big difference. I'm here 14 years and I still haven't got used to the summer. I struggle with the heat.
So the things that I link as Sri Lankan to me and my family is definitely food. There are lots of recipes that have been passed on from my grandmother to my mother and that we eat on special occasions, but also as an everyday. But there are also other items, musical instruments that we have brought over. There was, when we shared with our family and friends that we were going to migrate to Australia, there were, as a gift, so many family members and friends had ordered these handmade dinner sets. And up until recently, we migrated in 91, it's 2019, up until recently my mum actually has held on to all these plates, and it's the last one was replaced. Seeing her saris or seeing jewellery that were sort of given to her on her wedding day, those are the things that are linked to stories, and I really treasure those.
A lot of words that Australians use that were not usually used before. Like Malaysians were supposed to follow the British English, but then the kids get a lot of influence from American TV series. But then it's like words like I reckon, I'm like, that's not really used that widely. Yeah, there's heaps and heaps of difference. And then I remember the first time I came here and I said afternoon, meaning 12 o'clock in the afternoon, but everyone's like, no, afternoon is like later on. And then they say picking up the kids tonight, and I'm like, but it's not night when you pick up the kids, it's only 3 o'clock. There's a lot of differences.
In Australia, to keep a bit more of our traditions, we generally get together with the family. So here I've got my mum and my sister, and we get together and we cook food. That's perhaps the thing that we do day to day. And there is a particular type of food that Mateo really likes. What's it called, Mateo?
Pupusas.
And what are pupusas?
A big pancake with beans and meat in it.
And do you cook them? How do you cook them? Do you cook them on a pan? Do you cook them in a pot? Do you cook them in an oven?
You cook them on a frying pan.
Mm-hmm.
And
are they really yummy? Do you like them?
yes.
Can kids make them?
They can put the stuff inside in, but they can't really cook it.
Not because it's a hot pan. Mateo really does enjoy preparing them. You sort of make them into a little ball and then you flatten it out and it's a little pancake. And usually that means that because it's the ingredients are kind of hard to make, it does mean that you have to cook lots and lots of them. So it either involves the whole family coming together to eat or inviting friends over. So it's always a bit of an occasion.
We basically eat what we used to in Brazil. The staples is rice and beans. And I'm actually from Rio de Janeiro. And in Rio we actually eat rice and black beans. And in São Paulo they eat rice and brown beans, but it's rice and beans. So you see it, we eat it mostly every day, rice, beans, and then something else. In Brazil it would be rice, beans, and some kind of meat, salad, sometimes fried, some chips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that is different from here. You see that here people, for lunch, you usually have just a sandwich or something like that, but we still do the same way we used to do back in Brazil, which is to carry our lunch box with all the legumes, grains, and cooked everything,
it's a proper meal.
Vegetables and
Yeah, and when Serena comes home, she always tells me that friends tell her not to eat sandwich because she brings bread because they think it's her lunch. And so no, that's not my lunch. That's my snack. And she has a thermos with rice, beans, and legumes and vegetables.
I'm here 14 years now, and for the middle chunk of that, I think I was quite homesick, and I stopped listening to music and, you know, stopped cooking dishes that my mum would have cooked. And now I really have a yearning to engage with Irish culture. I feel really, you know, I want to become familiar with Irish writers and modern Ireland, you know, and the musicians and, you know, the social scene in Ireland at the moment. Yeah, I feel a strong yearning to reconnect, having put it at bay for some years.
So when we first came here, we didn't have any family, and we have Malaysian friends in Melbourne in general, but none in the Coburg area. So I think the closest one would be in the southeast and the eastern suburbs. So we chose this area, and we chose this school specifically because of the small, close-knit community. When IRA started year one, I think there were less than 300 students, and then we made really, really close friends, and these people are our families. Like when we have family emergencies and stuff like that, they've been the one looking after the kids.
The other way that we express our culture is through our language. We are a bilingual family. My wife, Amelia, is originally from a town, what's the town called, Mateo?
Bordertown in
And
South Australia.
And what happens in Bordertown? There's a big
Farm.
There's a big farm. And what's in this farm?
Sheep and crops.
And so, as you can imagine, we come from two very different places, Amelia and I. And so Amelia speaks to Mateo and to his brother Ellis in English, and I speak to them in Spanish. So Mateo is bilingual; he can speak both English and Spanish, and he's pretty good at switching between the two languages at home, or with my mum, or whenever we call relatives back home, or whenever we meet people down the street. People that they're at shops and all that kind of thing. And even your sensei at karate. Where is your sensei from karate?
Venezuela.
So she speaks Spanish too. And you understand what she tells you?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tig, and I'm 11 years old, and my mum's Irish and my dad's Australian. I've visited Ireland a few times, and it's really nice. Yeah, the summers are hotter than I expected, to be honest, and the winters where I thought it would be. And my mum's side of the family there, they're really nice.
When I go to Malaysia, I think of how hot it's gonna be, because when I get there, the temperature just becomes much hotter when I get off the plane. And apart from the hot weather, there's a lot of traffic when you drive in Malaysia, and you're actually spending much more time in the car, and lots of people don't wear a seatbelt there because they don't really follow the rules sometimes. And the food there is mostly rice, because that's my favorite food at Malaysia. And so a lot of people like curry, rice, bread, and that kind of food.
Oh, hi in Portuguese is oi. So if you hear people speaking Portuguese and they say oi, it's not the oi the Australians usually say.
My name is Kara, and I'm 7 years old, half Irish, half Australian, and my dad's Australian. Eu quero que o papai sempre faz esse molho de tomate porque eu gosto desse molho de tomate.
Adiós.